The humid air of Quezon province hung thick with the kind of heaviness that preceded a storm, one that no one could see but everyone could feel. In a small wooden house tucked between coconut trees and rice fields, 8-year-old Leo Reyes sat by his mother's bedside, listening to the shallow, uneven breaths escaping her lips. The summer wind carried the distant sound of tricycles and barking dogs, but inside the house, the world had gone frighteningly still. His mother, Marites, once the loudest singing voice in their church choir, now lay motionless, her face pale, her skin cool, and her heartbeat weakening with every passing hour. Leo's father paced outside, speaking hurriedly to neighbors offering prayers, condolences, or rides to the nearest clinic, none of which could bring comfort now. They didn't have the money for hospital care. They barely had money for food. Leo held his mother's hand, small fingers trembling as tears blurred his sight. "Mama, don't leave me. I promise I'll be good. I promise I'll follow everything you say. Please wake up." No response, only the faint rise and fall of her chest, shallow as a dying ember. A candle flickered, a rosary lay resting on her pillow. A bowl of uneaten lugas sat untouched beside her. And beside the window, Leo's small guitar leaned against the wall, the guitar his mother had saved 6 months to buy, the one he used to practice for school events and barangay fiestas. "Mama, you said you loved my singing." His voice cracked. "What if I sing now? Will you hear me?" His father, outside, choked on a sob. He was a man who rarely cried, even the typhoons that took their crops never made him shed a tear. But this, losing the woman he loved, the mother of his only child. This was a storm he had no strength to stand against. Inside the room, thunder rumbled in the distance. Leo wiped his cheeks and reached for the guitar. It was too big for his arms, but he had learned how to hold it just right, the way Mama taught him. He plucked the strings softly, each note trembling like a wounded bird. His mother didn't move. "Please hear me," he whispered. He began to sing. It wasn't a powerful voice. It wasn't technically perfect, but it carried something far more potent, childlike purity, fierce love, and a desperation born from a fear no 8-year-old should ever know. He sang the lullaby she used to sing when he couldn't sleep, the one she hummed while cooking, the one she said reminded her of how precious life was. The notes quivered at first, but as the storm winds outside began to howl, Leo's voice grew stronger, fuller, warmer. "Di ka nag-isa, ako'y kasama mo, kahit saan ka man mapunta." Thunder cracked. Rain slammed against the nipa roof. But Leo didn't stop. His father stepped inside, rain dripping from his hair, his eyes swelling as he saw his son pouring his soul into every trembling note. Then, like a miracle stitched between raindrops and prayer, a sound slipped through the storm. A breath, a longer breath, a steadier breath. Leo's voice faltered. He looked at his mother, eyes wide. Her fingers twitched, her lips parted, releasing a whisper, weak, but unmistakably alive. "Leo." The guitar fell from his hands as he leapt toward her, crying harder than he ever had in his life. His father collapsed to his knees, covering his mouth in disbelief, sobbing into his hands. Marites blinked slowly, her gaze confused but focused enough to recognize her son's tear-streaked face hovering above her. "You sang to me," she murmured. Leo nodded fiercely. "I thought you were going to leave." Her weak smile formed like dawn fighting through thick clouds. "How could I leave, when my little boy still needs me to clap for him?" His father let out a broken laugh, half joy, half exhaustion. Outside, the storm continued to roar, but inside, a different kind of storm had been calmed. Word spread around the barangay like wildfire. People called it a miracle. Some said angels must have carried Leo's voice. Others believed it was a mother's unbreakable will to stay alive for her son. But one thing was certain. That night forged something unshakable between Leo and his mother, something stronger than storms, sickness, or the poverty that surrounded them. And for a long time, everything felt like a gift. But gifts have limits, and miracles do not come twice, not for everyone. 15 years passed. Leo grew tall, lean, and handsome in the quiet way of provincial boys. His voice matured into a velvety tenor that made people stop mid-task to listen. He sang in barangay halls, charity events, and eventually in small Manila cafes. People called him the boy with the miracle voice. He hated that title, not because he disliked singing, he loved it. Singing was life. Singing brought him joy, purpose, direction. Singing had given him a future. But it also reminded him of a truth he carried like a curse. The night he saved his mother, he didn't feel like a hero. He felt terrified. terrified that next time, he wouldn't be able to save her again. And that, next time, crept closer like a slow, invisible shadow. His mother's heart condition, though stabilized, never fully healed. Over the years, she grew weaker. Some days she was vibrant, cooking adobo while singing old love songs. Other days she could barely stand. Doctors recommended surgery, but the price was unreachable. They tried savings, loans, help from relatives, even benefit concerts. Still not enough. Then came the day everything shifted. Leo arrived home after a cafe performance to find his father crying by the door. He hadn't cried since that night 15 years ago. She collapsed, his father whispered. We rushed her to the clinic, but the doctor said he couldn't finish. He didn't need to. Leo pushed past him and entered the bedroom. His mother lay on the bed, chest rising only slightly, her face ghostly pale, her lips colorless. A machine beeped beside her, each beep slower than the one before. A nurse adjusted an IV drip, biting her lip with worry. His mother opened her eyes. Leo, Anik. He knelt swiftly beside her, grabbing her hand. I'm here, Ma, I'm here. She smiled faintly, though her eyes glassed with pain. My boy with the beautiful voice, you're all grown now. Tears blurred his sight. Don't talk like that, you're going to get better. She chuckled weakly. Ah, the same words you said when you were 8. She lifted a trembling hand to touch his cheek. But I'm not afraid anymore. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The first time, I couldn't leave you. I heard you singing. I followed your voice back. His throat tightened. I can sing again, Ma. I'll sing anything you want. Just like back then. She exhaled shakily. My love, that night was a miracle. But miracles are not tasks you repeat. They are gifts, once given. No, he said sharply, voice cracking. No, Mama, don't say that. Her eyes softened. I lived 15 more years because of you. Because your voice was the bridge that carried me back. She squeezed his hand softly. But my bridge is finished now. He shook his head. No, it's not real. You're tired. You're just tired. She wiped a tear from his cheek with her thumb. Sing for me, one last time. But not to save me. Sing to send me home peacefully. He couldn't breathe. The mere thought of singing while losing her felt like being asked to smile while drowning. But she took his trembling hands and held them to her chest. Please. He nodded, choking back sobs. He reached for her old guitar. Resting in the corner. The same one from 15 years ago. The strings had been replaced many times, but the body was still the same. The wood was scratched, faded, but full of memories. He strummed. The notes wavered at first, because his hands were shaking, but soon his fingers settled over the chords like muscle memory guided by grief. He began singing the same lullaby from that night. Di ka nag-isa, ako'y kasama mo. His voice cracked. He tightened his jaw and pushed harder, singing through tears, singing even when breathing hurt, singing even when the nurse quietly stepped back, giving him space. His mother listened with her eyes closed, a peaceful smile blooming like a final sunrise. But as he sang, he knew, this time, the bridge he built with his voice could not reach her. The miracle that had once defied death now simply softened it. Her breathing slowed, slower, until her chest stopped rising. His last notes trembled into silence. The nurse lowered her head. His father broke down behind him. But Leo, he didn't cry, not immediately. He held his mother's hand and whispered, I'm here, Ma. I'm still singing. Only then did his heart finally shatter. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. People told him he was lucky to have been gifted 15 more years with her. Others said destiny had simply taken back what it had loaned. But Leo carried a different truth. He felt like a failure. Because even though he knew miracles were not meant to be repeated, part of him had believed, hoped, prayed that if he sang hard enough, loved hard enough, he could save her again. He couldn't, and that failure carved itself into his heart like a scar. He stopped singing, not publicly, not privately, not at all. His guitar gathered dust in a corner. His voice, once the pride of the barangay, once the hope of his mother, went silent. People asked him to perform again. He refused. Talent scouts approached. He walked away. Friends begged him to return to music. He couldn't. Every song reminded him of her. Every melody reminded him of what he lost, what he couldn't save. Until, one quiet night a year later, he sat alone by the sea, the wind brushing against his face, the waves humming as if singing for him. He closed his eyes and remembered his mother's smile, her laughter, her soft humming while washing dishes. And finally, Something inside him loosened. He realized something. His mother never asked him to save her twice. She asked him to sing. Because singing was the language of his soul. He lifted his head. For the first time in a year, he opened his mouth, and a note slipped out, soft and trembling but real. Then another. Then another. The wind carried his voice across the water. He wasn't singing to save anyone. He was singing to remember. He was singing to heal. He was singing because somewhere, somehow, he knew his mother would hear him, not to come back, but to smile. And so he sang, not for miracles, but for love, and this time, it was enough.